Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the first episode of Beta Bay Ball in quite some time. I believe the last episode was July 8th or 9th or something like that. Now we're looking at August 22nd. That's on me. I have been extremely busy as of late between internship and work, family, and whatnot. But I'm excited to be back today. It's going to be more NBA offseason. A lot of time has passed. More things have happened. And I decided I wanted to come up with a little bit of a fun topic today in terms of spinning the discussion around the NBA offseason. I've come up with the good, the meh, and the ugly. Play on the good, the bad, the ugly. So I'm going to rate my 5 favorite moves of the offseason, 5 moves that I felt were kind of in the middle of the pack that didn't really impress me one way or another. Who knows? Maybe one of them will later down the line. Maybe they'll continue to be nothing, or maybe they'll end up kind of bad. Maybe moves that are sort of hard to read, but as of right now, they seem sort of meh. They don't really inspire. They don't really move the needle one way or the other. And then 5 terrible moves. I'm doing my best to sort of ignore. I think there's only one move on here that relates to the draft per se. Because this isn't about the draft, right? This isn't about like what team executed a good draft and thus had a good offseason. Like the Spurs had a good offseason because they had a good draft. They lucked into the number 2 overall pick and then had another great pick at pick 14. But anyways, I think it's right since I have 15, moves I want to talk about. Oh, and I'm also trying to limit the number of times a certain team comes up on here. Like, I think the Pelicans are the only team that comes up multiple times, and if you know anything about the NBA right now and you've kept up with the offseason, you know why the Pelicans are coming up multiple times. The same could be said for the Hawks, but I left the Hawks off of this. The one move I left off of this that you could put in top 5 best moves of the offseason was them getting in on Kristaps Porzingis for essentially nothing. They gave up the terrible Terrence Mann contract that they took on during the regular season last year, and they got off of George Niang, who the Celtics actually just traded for R.J. Lewis Jr., the undrafted rookie out of St. John's. So really, he was just salary dumped out to Utah, and the Celtics, they look pretty bad right now, and Terrence Mann, sadly, the only NBA player I've actually got to meet in person, probably going to rot out this season in Brooklyn. So, anyways, we're going to start with my 5 favorite moves of the offseason. We'll start with number 5 in terms of favorite moves, and that's going to be Lonzo Ball to the Cavaliers for Isaac Okoro straight up. It felt like Isaac Okoro kind of reached his peak with the Cavs as I look up his stats right now. I liked Okoro. Sadly, the expectations are kind of high when you're a top 5 pick like he was, going 5th overall back in the 2020 NBA draft. For his career, he's averaged just 8 points. 8 points a game, last year he shot 37% from 3. I think if you have this guy just standing in the corner, chucking up threes and playing defense for you, he'll be a pretty good part of that Bulls team that will probably end up being a play-in team. But in terms of the reason I like this move, I like it a lot for the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers no longer have Ty Jerome. They thought that, and everybody sort of thought that he would be kind of getting a bigger bag. I think he only got around 3 years, $28 million. I think everyone kind of expected a lot more. Maybe like a team like the Nets were expected to kind of give him a big contract, but that just didn't happen. Instead, they drafted 5.4 point guards in a center with guard skills, so really terrible offseason for the Nets. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that Cavs let go of Ty Jerome. They thought he'd get paid more. In turn, they move off of Isaac Okoro, which is just fine because you've added Max Strus within the past couple of years. You signed Sam Morrell. You traded for DeAndre Hunter last season. So really, Isaac Okoro is a guy that you can afford to move on from, especially when it's Lonzo Ball coming back in return. Getting Lonzo Ball is massive for this team. Lonzo doesn't have that same quickness that he used to have, yes, but at Lonzo's peak, he's a fantastic 3-and-D player, and that's just something that Ty Jerome wasn't. Ty Jerome was a total negative when he was on the floor with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. He was a terrible, terrible defender, and to have 3 small guards out there was just really detrimental to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, to add Lonzo to this team that is looking to contend and kind of has a wide-open runway this season in the Eastern Conference, I think that's a massive move for the Cavaliers. Lonzo Ball I think will just provide this team with a steady hand in terms of shooting. I would like to see this team kind of protect him a little bit, maybe limit the amount of games he actually plays in the regular season, and make sure that he's healthy heading into the postseason, because I think he could do a lot for this Cavs team come postseason play, when really the only team that you need to be scared of right now until we see differently come regular season is the New York Knicks. So that is my fifth favorite move of the offseason. Lonzo Ball straight up to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like that's a good deal for them. A year ago, Lonzo Ball was demanding first round picks. 2 years ago, he was demanding multiple first round picks. So to get him for Isaac Okoro, sort of a throwaway, a guy you weren't going to re-sign if you're Cleveland, really, really savvy move by the front office there in Cleveland. And again, it's the Chicago Bulls being the only team in the NBA that continues to do these one-for-one player trades when they're sending out a player that is a real contender contributor like a Lonzo Ball. I mean, if you remember, a year ago, it was Josh Giddey straight up for Alex Caruso, and Caruso was a player that within, the couple of years before he got traded was demanding, a first or multiple first-round picks, and Giddey was clearly the odd man out in OKC. And it wasn't that bad for Okoro in Cleveland, but, his time was coming to an end, and they made the most of it. Number 4 for my favorite moves of the offseason. Kind of hard to pick here, but I'm stuck between... I have my favorite move. I do. Oh, do I? Okay. My 4th favorite move, I'm going to go with Norman Powell to the Heat. That trade I thought was really savvy for the Heat. The Heat sent out Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love to the Jazz. The Jazz gave up... who did the Jazz send out? The Jazz gave somebody to the Clippers. John Collins to the Clippers, and then Norman Powell to the Heat. I like this for the Heat because it gives them an offensive punch that they needed. Andrew Wiggins is not a good offensive player for them right now. You just don't know what you're going to get out of him. Bam Adebayo continues to not really take that next step offensively, and you just really don't know what you're going to get from the Miami Heat and what they got. And I think with Norman Powell, he's kind of a known commodity coming into the season. He averaged 22 points per game last season. He was the front runner for MIP until he got hurt. He was probably going to be an all-star, could have been an all-star in the Eastern Conference. I like Norman Powell. I like that they're going to be able to play him at the small forward position. I do think that Davion Mitchell should start for this Miami Heat team because I think they're going to be really bad defensively between Norman Powell and Tyler Hero. But if you're able to put those two out there with Bam, Davion Mitchell, and Khalil Ware, I think that helps to lift those guys up. This Miami Heat team could avoid the play-in if they get jumps from guys like Nikola Jovic. Davion Mitchell kind of keeps up that offensive leap that he took last year when he landed in Miami, and you need Terry Rozier to kind of turn it around, and maybe Pelle Larsson to jump up. And they got Fontecchio as well, so if he can contribute, that'll be something. Yakinchonis they drafted. He was kind of a meh player in the Summer League. He had one really good game and one pretty terrible game that I remember. But for Miami, this to me really bolsters that offense that was pretty terrible last season. I mean, really unwatchable for long portions of the season last year. If Tyler Hero wasn't playing hero ball, they were scoring 80 points, 85 points a game. So to add Norman Powell, I think that'll be a big deal. I don't mind it for the Clippers to give him up. If you're the Clippers, you didn't want to pay Norman Powell. I'm not someone that really, really believes that Norman Powell... Like, the Clippers got bashed for this trade at the time, and now that they've landed Bradley Beal, people have kind of given them a lot of grace in terms of that. But I didn't understand the bashing for the Clippers for this. To me, Norman Powell is a great player. I don't think he'll be able to replicate just how great he was a year ago, and eventually you will have to pay him, so Miami is committing themselves to paying Norman Powell. But to me, this is still a really good ad. It bolsters an offense that was dreadful last season. It adds necessary spacing for guys like Bam and Khalil Ware. It just was a really savvy pickup. You gave up guys that weren't going to contribute to this team. Kevin Love was getting DMPs. Kyle Anderson was never going to fit in with what Eric Spoelstra wants to do in Miami. So to me, just a fantastic, savvy move by Pat Pat Riley, and it'll probably be one of the last great ones he does as he sort of winds down his career here. But he still wants to compete, and so trying to be a competitive team in the Eastern Conference, this was a good move for Miami. I think, like I said a couple times already, it really bolsters what was a dreadful offense last season. Now to my other move that I was debating between Norman and this one, Kevin Durant to the Rockets. For a lot of people, this is their favorite move of the offseason. To me, I think there was a couple more that did more for their teams. Got to remember, the Rockets were already a top 2 seed last year, but how realistic was that really? They were also a very easy upset pick. I was not alone in picking the Warriors to beat them last year, but for me, Kevin Durant is a massive pickup. He is still a top 10 contributor in the NBA. He's been top 10 in MVP the last couple of years. The Suns were nothing without him. They were decent with him last year, which was impressive considering how bad everything was around them. I think that Kevin Durant is going to completely transform this half-court offense for Houston, this half-court offense that was pretty much dead last in the NBA last season at times. I remember seeing a graphic that was like the Rockets offense was like 29th, and then a week later, or 2 weeks later, funny enough, I watched another Rockets game, and they put up a graphic, and they're like, wow, look at this. Like, in the last 2 weeks, this offense has jumped up to second in the NBA, or was second in the NBA over that stretch, and that's when the Rockets really climbed the standings. So to add Kevin Durant to that offense, I think will be massive. I think he's a better defender than people give him credit for. I think you kind of find two parties when people talk about Kevin Durant's defense. You have the crowd that thinks he is this underrated, amazing rim protector and is a great defender, and then you have people that think he sucks. I don't think he's really either. I think he is a decent rim protector, but I think the numbers kind of lie from last season. He had great rim defensive numbers because he was really the tallest guy on the court most of the time. For the Suns, this year it'll be different with Jabari Smith Jr., Clint Capella, Steven Adams, Tari Eason, all these Dorian Finney-Smith, Amen Thompson, Jae'Sean Tate, so many great defensive players around him that I think it'll be amazing for Kevin. I think Kevin being at times your 4th or 5th best defender on the floor is an unbelievable thing. I think the Rockets are a top 3 contender in the Western Conference. I think it goes the Thunder, the Nuggets, and the Rockets, and I think it's the Kevin Durant move that puts the Rockets there. So maybe this should be higher up on my list, but this is just, for me personally, this is how I feel about it. I think that the Rockets didn't have to get KD to sort of really upgrade their team, but KD was an awesome land for them. He's really going to save this team's half-court offense. I still worry about this team's three-point shooting as a whole. Kevin Durant's not this elite three-point shooter. He's really, obviously, the mid-range assassin, but when you have Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, and Fred VanVleet, I just don't know how much room he'll have to work with on a consistent basis, but that's something you kind of worry about down the line when you get into the postseason. Right now, you just kind of enjoy what you've done and what this team is going to look like. I mean, this Rockets team will likely have 2 All-Stars in Amen Thompson and Kevin Durant, maybe Sengun and Kevin Durant, but I really like this move for the Rockets. It bolsters their offense. Kevin Durant is just another guy out there who is going to at least be a net neutral on defense at all times, so you don't really sacrifice anything defensively. I think he'll be a good veteran presence. I know it's kind of a funny thing to say about Kevin Durant, but I do think that he'll get along with the guys on this team. I think the only thing you'd have to worry about would be him and Ime Udoka kind of clashing heads, but you kind of have to sort of give in to Kevin Durant and let him do what he wants to do because he is a bona fide Hall of Famer and maybe the greatest pure scorer of all time, not named Michael Jordan. My second favorite move of the offseason. I thought this was going to be my favorite move, but when I kind of read out the other one, I think I'm going to go with the other one for my favorite. So my second favorite move is Nickeil Alexander-Walker to the Atlanta Hawks for pretty much a couple second-round picks and slightly above the trade exception level of money. If I click on his name on my laptop here, can I see 4 years, $62 million deal? So yeah, just slightly above the mid-level trade exception right there. Why I love this Nickeil Alexander-Walker deal so much is you're adding a guy who can be your backup ball handler, which you also did with Luke Kennard, because you really don't know who's going to be the backup point guard to Trae Young. You don't really have one. Kobe Buffkin and Keaton Wallace, one of those two guys, will have to step up at some point, probably as the third point guard behind Nickeil, who I would imagine Nickeil will kind of act as the backup ball handler to Trae Young. Nikhil is also an elite defender, one of the best in the NBA. And not only is he one of the best in the NBA, but he's maybe the best second defender in the NBA on any team. You think back to last year with that Timberwolves team, you had Jaden McDaniels, so Nikhil got to be the second best defender to Daniel McDaniels, and now he gets to do the same thing again, this time next to Dyson Daniels. So you add Nikhil, which gives you some more spacing. It gives another guy out. It's another guy out there for Trae Young to kick it out to. I think Nikhil will probably have one of the best offensive years of his career next to Trae Young. I think Trae Young, this move kind of makes him a dark horse candidate for MVP, right? You surround him with a bunch of guys. I already mentioned how they got Kristaps Porzingis. I don't expect Porzingis to play a whole lot. I've read that he's kind of over the sickness that he had, but I do think that, we'll probably see more of Onyeka Okongwu in the regular season than anything, and maybe some Mohamed Gay minutes at the backup center position. Jalen Johnson hopefully stays healthy for this Atlanta Hawks team, but rounding out their starting five with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, to me, just makes this team a legitimate Eastern Conference Finals contender. I think outside of the Knicks and the Cavs, to me, the easy next two picks to make the Eastern Conference Finals would be the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks, and I might be more inclined to take the Atlanta Hawks. I love Trae Young. I think Trae Young is one of the best point guards in the NBA. I think Dyson Daniels is obviously one of, if not, the best point of attack defender in the NBA. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is right up there as well as a point of attack defender. He's a great three-point shooter. It's just, to me, a move that is really serious for the Atlantic Hawks. It's not kind of like this, we've seen in the past where they got kind of swing big and they trade for a DeJounte Murray type. No, Nickeil wasn't crazy expensive. He didn't break the bank, and you surrounded that moves with other great moves. But that move in a vacuum, to me, was really smart. I think he'll fit in really, really well with what Atlanta is doing. And it's not like you went out and overpaid him. I mean, 4 for 62. You'll take that every damn day for a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And when you look at this Atlanta Hawks depth chart, they have a legit team. Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, Onyeka Okongwu, Zachary Richase, Luke Kennard, who's been a top 3-point shooter in the NBA. It's just like Trae Young, right, where he's a terrible, 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 terrible defender who will get picked on, but when you can surround him with a lineup that includes Nah and Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson, and if Porzingis is himself and healthy, he's a backline defender. So really, I like a lot of what this team did. You also drafted Asa Anul, and you moved back to do that. You could say maybe the best move of the offseason was their draft night trade, where they traded back from 13 to 23, I think, and that way, and they got a unprotected Pelicans or Bucks, one of the two picks, whichever one is better, next season for that 13th overall pick, which ended up being Derek Queen. That was a fantastic move for them. So even if this Hawks team suffers injuries or just straight up disappoints, they could end up with a very great pick from the Pelicans or Bucks, more likely the Pelicans than not. But to me, the Nickeil Alexander-Walker pickup was just really savvy, really smart, didn't break the bank for him. He's a guy who will contribute on both sides of the floor, and I could see him really having a career year with the Hawks. I mean, let's pull up this guy's stats real quick. Ooh. Dude, where is this man? Here he is, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, last year he was 6th and 6th man of the year voting. This year he'll be or he'll be a starter this season. Excuse me. He played all 82 games both of the last two seasons. This is a guy who shoots 39% from three, has shot 38 for that's 3 years in a row. So I really do think that, and that's on 4+ attempts a game. So I really do think that Nickeil could be a fantastic player. I think he'll be an amazing player. Right now, Basketball Reference is projecting him to, his per 36 projection is 13 points a game, so probably about 9.5, 10 points a game for Nickeil. But I low-key think he could get more than that. I think there's a chance that we see Nickeil Alexander-Walker average 12 points a game or something like that with the Hawks this season. Now, my favorite move of the offseason, I think a lot of people would agree with this. We saw the Denver Nuggets trade away Michael Porter Jr. and a 30 something, maybe 31 or 32, 33, something like that, first round pick, unprotected, of course, for Cam Johnson. This opened up about $11 million in cap space for them. So not only do you land Cam Johnson, who you can debate whether or not he's better than Michael Porter Jr., he's certainly less of a head case, certainly less of a jerk than Michael Porter Jr. He might be a more consistent shooter than Michael Porter Jr. He might not be as elite of a rebounder. He might not provide you with the same size, but he definitely knows how to move off ball much better than Michael Porter Jr. So really you could say, even if it is a 1-for-1 sort of trade, right, you're not really getting any better with Cam Johnson as you were compared to Michael Porter Jr. You were able to use that money that you saved in that trade to bolster this roster. I mean, this roster is so much better now, in my opinion. You added Tim Hardaway Jr., another guy who is experienced, who has no problem chucking up three-point shots. He's not a guy that you're going to rely on in the postseason, not at all, but he is somebody that you would rather have out there than maybe a Julian Strawther or a Cam, or a, where is he? Where is he on this? I can't find the other kid. Peyton Watson. Maybe you'd rather have Tim Hardaway Jr. out there than a Julian Strawther or Peyton Watson. You also added Bruce Brown Jr., who has been terrible since 2023 when he won a championship with the Nuggets. I want to say for Bruce Brown, like, it was kind of tough, right? He got the big contract. I believe it was from the Pacers. Then he got hurt. The Pacers traded him to the Raptors for Pascal Siakam, and then he was traded to the Pelicans. And it just felt like and that was in the Brandon Ingram trade. So Bruce Brown was injured. He was moving team to team. He was on 3 teams in 2 years, so he never really got a chance to settle in. Kind of 2 years of his career is kind of thrown down the drain, but he's at his best when he's playing next to Nikola Jokic, as is every role player in the NBA. So you add 2 fantastic role players, and then you make an amazing trade where you swap out Dario Saric, who is unplayable at this point in his NBA career, for Jonas Valanciunas, who is now the best backup center that Nikola Jokic has ever had in his career. This will allow Jokic to play less minutes in the regular season. It'll allow him to get a little bit more rest in playoff games, where the Nuggets kind of feel like they can kind of coast a little bit with Jonas out rather than Jokic. And Jonas does, do a lot of good things. He's a great rebounder. He can score the basketball, and he's not terrible distributing it either. Obviously, he's not even close to Jokic in any of those categories, but Jonas is a fantastic center who, in my opinion, can start for a third of the NBA and would immediately be the best center on a lot of teams. Like, he would be by far the best center on the Boston Celtics this season. So for me, I think the Denver Nuggets adding those 3 guys, and as well as they swapped Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. I think that's a fantastic move for them. Cam Johnson's had some injury issues, but Michael Porter Jr. I think is more well known for his injury issues, so I think it's kind of a sort of thing right there. And then DaRon Holmes is coming back. I don't think DaRon Holmes will contribute much. The guy, DaRon Holmes, the center out of Dayton, who was drafted last year and tore his ACL or Achilles, one of the 2, in the summer league. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys new to the team for the Nuggets, and DaRon Holmes is healthy. I think all of this sort of sets up the Nuggets to be the second best contender in the NBA next season. I think all the top contenders are in the Western Conference. I mean, this team took the Thunder to 7 last year. They almost beat them. They were dealing with so many big injuries, right? Aaron Gordon was hurt. Jamal Murray was still a little hobbled. And Jokic was just totally gassed, and they still almost beat that Thunder team. So I think if this Thunder team walked into that series last year with this roster, right, a roster of Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, Cam Johnson, Jokic, Valanciunas, Aaron Gordon, Tim Hardaway Jr., I think that team could have won that series, so I think that is my favorite move of the offseason. Cam Johnson in return for Michael Porter Jr. and a first-round pick that you just simply don't care about. So, take a quick breather, and when I come back, we're going to move on to the meh moves that really didn't sway me, one way or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, took a sip of my tea, my cherry limeade, boosted tea, I think is what they call it from Slim Possible. It's pretty good. It's pretty good tea. And we're going to move on to some not pretty good moves that just really didn't impress me in any way. And this one is relevant. These are not going to be ranked. We won't rank the middle of the pack. Who cares, So, this one's sort of relevant because news broke on this that the FBI is no longer probing Malik Beasley for betting on games. You feel really, really bad for Malik Beasley because it seems like he didn't do anything wrong in terms of this gambling thing. It seems like he wasn't gambling on any NBA games. He wasn't throwing anything on purpose. So that's a shame because Malik Beasley had a career year leading the NBA in threes, I believe. I know he broke a bunch of records in terms of bench player three-pointers. And there was a really, really good argument for him to win Sixth Man of the Year over Peyton Pritchard. But because of the uncertainty around him and the probe and everything else that came with it, you just couldn't rely on him if you were Detroit, and you had to make the tough decision of not missing out on other guys because you're sitting around to see what happens with Malik Beasley. You also feel bad for Beasley because he misses out on a life-changing contract when reports coming out that he owes all this money, and he's recently been evicted from his Detroit penthouse or apartment or whatever it was. So, Detroit replaces Malik Beasley with a combination of Duncan Robinson and Caris LeVert. Duncan Robinson is the direct Malik Beasley replacement at the two-guard, three-point shooter who's elite at shooting the three ball. And then obviously Caris LeVert kind of adds the shot creating effect that Malik Beasley had as well. So, you also get Jaden Ivey back if you're Detroit, as well as you brought in Javonte Green. But really, it's those two guys, Caris LeVert and Duncan Robinson, that I want to talk about, and why I'm not really moved by those moves for Detroit. To me, Duncan Robinson is not a good NBA player. And maybe I shouldn't say isn't good because he's an NBA player and he's a guy that has stuck around and will continue to stick around. But in Duncan Robinson's second year of his NBA career, 2019 to 2020, the NBA season that was cut short, he played 73 games, starting 68 of them where he had 13.5 points per game. And on 8.3 attempts per game, he shot 44.6% from three. The year after that, he scored 13 points again per game on 41% from three on 8.5 attempts. Then it was 11 points per game on 11 points per game, 8 attempts from three on 37.2%. And then it was an immediate fall off where the guy just kind of played less and less, only started one game in 22-23, averaging 6.5 points, shot 33% from three on 4.6 attempts. He's gone back up to his normal 39.5, 39.3 in the last two seasons, averaging 13 and 11. And those, of course, were also high volume seasons. But so he does the 3-point shooting that you want him to do. Honestly, in my eyes, he might be more of the Tim Hardaway replacement than anything, Duncan Robinson. But for me, though, Duncan Robinson's defense is just so atrocious that I fear that he'll get played off the floor. In his postseason career, he has been played off the floor plenty. He has struggled. Maybe I'm making it up and maybe he hasn't, but I feel like he's almost struggled in terms of playoff shooting. Over his career, he has shot 39.9%, so I guess I am wrong on that. He's been a terrible Eastern Conference Finals three-point shooter at 31.3%, but outside of that, he's been really good. I just feel like with Duncan Robinson, you gave him a big bag for this season. I guess not all the money that he was given is guaranteed, so that's a good thing if you're Detroit, but it just feels like he is a guy that could be played off the floor because he is so defensively poor. You have to hope that everybody else, right, Ausar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Cade Cunningham, are able to insulate him defensively. But I just don't think that's going to happen with Tobias Harris, who did play good defense last year, but getting on the older side, Caris LeVert and Marcus Sasser. I do worry about the defense for Duncan Robinson, and I wouldn't be surprised if come the postseason we see Duncan forced off the floor because of his inability to defend in high leverage situations. Caris LeVert, I like him, but Caris LeVert is not a fantastic three-point shooter. I don't think he's a guy that you want out there with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. It'll be interesting to see how they go about using him. I like Caris LeVert as a general player. We all remember when he got traded and the cancer scare happened. You're happy that he beat cancer. Caris LeVert is a likable guy, but there's a reason the Cleveland Cavaliers wanted to move off of him. I just don't think he's going to be this massive contributor that we saw last year in terms of the production that they got from Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. I just think that Detroit is really not going to get the production from those two guys that they got from their guys last season. And more than anything, if you're Detroit, you're really, really hoping that Duren takes a slight step forward, Ausar Thompson takes a bigger step forward offensively, and more than anything, Jaden Ivey bounces back from the broken leg, and it becomes the guy that he was promised to you when you drafted him a few years back. But regardless, Detroit, I think if this team kind of just paddles in the water, is better, and it avoids the play-in, right? You're a top 6 seed in the East. That's good enough. You already kind of skipped a step in the rebuild. Obviously, they've been rebuilding forever, so is that really true? I don't know, but it does feel like they very quickly went from, the worst team ever, one of the 5 worst NBA teams ever, to a legitimate playoff team. So for you to kind of not really go anywhere in terms of progression, that feels sort of okay for this Pistons team, especially when it already feels like the Eastern Conference is wrapped up between 2 top teams and then another 2 teams still ahead of the Pistons in the Hawks and the Magic. So for me, the Duncan Robinson and Caris LeVert additions for Detroit don't really move me. I don't think that they're going to be big blow-up signings. I don't think that they'll ruin the Pistons, but I also would be really shocked, honestly, if Duncan Robinson was this elite-level player for the Pistons. Moving on to my other meh move, doesn't really sway me one way or the other. And honestly, I kind of, in a sick way, like this move. But when I say it to you and read it to you, you're going to be like, well, what difference does that make? And that is Indiana trading 2 second-round picks for Jay Huff. This was before they re-signed Isaiah Jackson, and their projected starting centers was either going to be, he's not on their depth chart right now, so I'm forgetting his name because they chose to let him go, but he started games in the postseason last year. Oh, the goofy center who made those couple threes against the Knicks, not Tony Bradley, who was awesome last year, awesome in the fact that he got 10-day and then was a playoff contributor in a sense, I guess. Oh, who was that center? Pacers. Thomas Bryant, that's who it was. Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley were your projected centers a few weeks ago for the Pacers. Obviously, you let Miles Turner walk. Halliburton will be unavailable next season. But I do like the addition of Jay Huff. Huff, to me, is a guy that can stretch the floor a little bit. He can rebound the ball better than the guys that you have in terms of Tony Bradley. And even if he comes off the bench, it's super, super necessary front court depth, center depth. This was a team that, like I just said, your center room was, just absolutely atrocious. So to get Huff in there, who is he's not a starter, right? He really wouldn't start on any good team. I just think it's good because I think what Huff does is he spaces the floor that way that Indiana can make a lot of those passes from the elbow and work out of the middle of the floor like they like to do. That's where Indiana's at their best with their offense that moves at a quick pace and moves the ball around. You just weren't going to get that with Tony Bradley on the floor or James Wiseman on the floor or Thomas Bryant on the floor. So I think you will get that with James Huff. I think James Huff obviously is sort of due for a career year. He had his moments last year with the Grizzlies where he was a big-time contributor for them with all the injuries that they were dealing with at the center position. But I do think that this Pacers team could be something this year. I think that they'll finish better than a team like the Celtics. I think this Pacers team, I feel like you should pencil them in to be a play-in and maybe at best a 6 seed. Between Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, Andrew Niebenhard, TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith. This team just feels better than people give it credit for. Niebenhard, I think, will be a legitimate contender to win MIP. Mathurin, I think the same as well, though Mathurin would have to score probably 24 points a game to be there, but I think Mathurin is a guy that could do that. I mean, Mathurin could legitimately be an all-star if Indiana had a good first half of the season and he outscored a Siakam or something like that. So I do think this Pacers team is kind of getting underrated at this point, and I think the move for Jay Huff makes them underrated because I don't think that they'll be drowning at the center position like I thought so a few weeks ago. The only reason I don't have this as a good move and rather a meh move is because Jay Huff is not a starter level player. He's just a guy who is I don't want to say above replacement level, but like it's not like other teams' center rooms, right? The Celtics, like Jay Huff, might be a starter for the Boston Celtics, right? Him or Neemias Queta. I'd rather have him than Luka Garza. I'll tell you that much. So I do like the move for the Pacers, but still a meh move because of the talent level of Jay Huff. Next up, we got Jake LaRavia for the minimum for the Lakers. I'm now really realizing I have two Laker moves, so okay, that's fine. I'm not too upset about it. It was a little hard to find these meh moves, but that is, like I said, Jake LaRavia for pretty much the minimum. I think it was slightly above the minimum. More than anything, I think it's stupid that the Kings let this kid walk. He was the youngest unrestricted free agent to shake hands. I think LaRavia is a perfect guy to put next to LeBron and Luka. Especially Luka going forward. LaRavia averaged 7 points a game last year, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and shot 42.3% from 3. Those are very consistent with his career averages over 136 games throughout his career. Last season, he played in 66 games, playing 20 minutes a game, averaging 7 points. He shot 42.3% from 3. 2 years ago in the 23-24 season, when Memphis was absolutely killed with injuries, LaRavia played 35 games where he played 23 minutes a game, averaging 11 points, shooting 34% from 3 on 4.5 attempts. I think LaRavia is a guy that plays good defense. He's gonna, go out there, play hard-nosed defense. He's gonna give, good effort. His size is there, right, at 6'8", 235. This is a guy that can guard multiple positions. I really do like it for the Lakers. You needed bodies. Your team has just seen so much turnover in the last few years that it just felt super, super necessary. Right now, NBA GM is projecting LaRavia to come off the bench, which makes sense. But I do really like that. He's not necessarily a true wing, but he's just a guy who sort of kind of fits into the wing mold that the Lakers are uber desperate for because they don't really have any real life wings. LeBron's obviously a wing, but LeBron is LeBron within his own. And then all the other wings on this team, Rui doesn't move like a wing. Dalton Connect has yet to really have consistent NBA success. And Jared Vanderbilt cannot score the basketball. So I like this move for the Lakers. I think LaRavia will provide good spacing, good defense, and I think JJ Redick will be able to do a lot of really good things with him in that lineup. The other Lakers move that I have, we'll just skip the other one I have right here and jump to the other one. Marcus Smart. I like this move. It's a cheap deal. Marcus Smart I think will be a good player for this Lakers team. I watched a lot of him last year when he ended up on the Wizards. He gave a lot of effort, and I remember when Bronny James was coming out of high school, his pro comp was Bronny James. Or did I say that? When Bronny James was coming out of high school, his pro comp was Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart can help Bronny James sort of grow up a little bit and teach him, hey, Bronny, if you want to carve out a role for yourself in the NBA, you got to play like me. I think the one thing you have to worry about with Marcus Smart, if you're a Lakers fan, is obviously him kind of just chucking up stupid threes. That's what he's always done. But Marcus Smart can shoot the 3-ball at a decent clip, so you provide that to your offense. And I do think it'll be nice to have Marcus Smart out there when you have Luka and Austin Reeves and Dalton Connect and Gabe Vincent trying to play defense. I think them letting Dorian Finney-Smith go was a terrible move. I think Rob Pelinka is a dirty person for telling people that Dorian Finney-Smith had a shoulder problem or something like that, and thus he deserved less money. But regardless, I like this Marcus Smart move. But Marcus Smart is also older. He's a total wild card offensively. And you're asking a 31-year-old Marcus Smart who has not consistently stayed healthy for 2 years in a row to be your best point of attack defender. If this was Marcus Smart of 3 years ago, I would have this as a great move and one of my favorite of the offseason because I'm a Marcus Smart fan. But right now, Marcus Smart is older. He hasn't consistently played in the last few years. He's been dealing with injury history. He's an inconsistent offensive player, especially in terms of shot selection, let alone at the clip that he makes it. But he is a good point of attack defender to add to this roster. A position of need for this team. You add guard depth, you add point guard depth, you add ball handler depth. Point guard depth, right? And most importantly, you add a guy who can be a point of attack defender. So I really do think that is good in that sense, but Marcus Smart isn't somebody who makes me think, wow, the Lakers are a real contender, or wow, the Lakers will most certainly avoid the play-in because they added Marcus Smart, right? So that's why I have it as a meh move. But the additions of Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart, I think were smart adds for the Los Angeles Lakers. Moving on to my last meh move, we have the Portland Trailblazers adding Jrue Holiday. To me, this was a mad move because you added more money onto your books. Holiday's salary was bigger and a longer contract compared to Anthony Simons. Holiday is older and just had the worst year of his career since very early on in his career in terms of shooting splits. I think he can do a lot in terms of mentorship for someone like Scoot Henderson. Maybe Shadion Sharp as well. I honestly like the Damian Lillard edition more for the Trailblazers, although he probably won't play this season. But I think it's still a meh move for the Trailblazers rather than a good move for all the reasons, one, that I just listed, but two, because I don't think this Trailblazers team will make the playoffs in the West. At least I can't see a world where they're higher than the 10 seed or 9 seed. Right now, this team, your starting point guard is either Scoot Henderson or Jrue Holiday. Your starting shooting guard is going to be Shadion Sharp. Your starting small forward will either be Jeremy Grant or Deni Avdija, but it's probably Deni Avdija. Your starting power forward is Toumani Camara, fantastic defender. And then your starting center is either Robert Williams or Donovan Clingan, probably Clingan. So a second-year center backed up by a center that can never stay healthy, and then Duop Freeth, and then obviously the rookie Yang Hansen. And then you still have Matisse Thybulle and Blake Wesley, who doesn't make a difference for me. Thybulle, great defender, but what has he done in the last few years? And then Jeremy Grant was terrible last year, one of the worst years of his career. So for me, the Jrue Holiday move is meh because I don't see him putting this team over the edge. You've added more money onto your books when you had a young team that was kind of going in the right direction and is still a couple years away from being a real playoff competitor with a core of Camara, Clingan, Sharp, and Henderson. And we'll see what Damian Lillard ends up contributing down the line for this team because it was a multi-year contract. Maybe not this season, but definitely next season we will see Damian Lillard contributing for this Blazers team, although it'll be interesting to see if he comes off the bench or not. But yeah, Holiday, meh. Kind of interesting in terms of his contract compared to Anthony Simons. How much will his defense really matter? Can he really get you over the hump into the postseason in the Western Conference? And is he going to hold on to what he's already kind of started to lose in terms of offensive productivity? So that's it for my five. That is it for my 5 meh additions of the offseason. The Pistons replacing Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. with Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. Jay Huff for 2 second-round picks to the Pacers. Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart both on small contracts to the Lakers, bolstering their defense and sort of kind of their three-point shooting. And then the Portland Trailblazers swapping Anthony Simons for a aged Jrue Holiday. So we'll be right back for my 5 terrible moves of the offseason, moves I think will maybe sink a few of these teams. All right, so we're going to start with the least evil, least terrible of these 5 bad additions. And that is going to be Jalen Green to the Suns in return for Kevin Durant. I think the Suns did a good job with the Kevin Durant trade for the most part. I like that they got the 10th overall pick. I like that they got Malawach. I like that they got Mark Williams. I like that they got Dylan Brooks in return. But for Jalen Green, it just kind of felt silly. The Suns don't have a true point guard. Jalen Green is not that. You're forcing Devin Booker to continue to play the true point guard. How good can a backcourt of Devin Booker and Jalen Green be? Like, how high is the ceiling on that? Jalen Green is coming off the worst playoff series of his career, where he had 1 great game and 4 or 5 garbage games. His contract is short and kind of expensive. And there was a reason that the Rockets wanted to get rid of him. So you allowed the Rockets, who have all these picks, all these great young players, all this stuff going on with that roster, and you don't get any of it in return. You didn't get Atari Eason. You didn't get a Jabari Smith Jr. You didn't get a Şengün or an Amen Thompson, although you weren't going to get either of those guys, truthfully. But I do think that this team, the Suns, should have gotten Atari Eason or Jabari Smith Jr. in return for Kevin Durant. I feel like Jalen Green kind of leaves you coming up short. I know that the Suns wanted to try and find another shooter for Jalen Green, but now they're kind of stuck with them. So I think the Suns could be in for a bad season defensively with a front court, of an injury-prone Mark Williams, a rookie center, and then obviously you have a bunch of guys on that team from last season who haven't done anything offensively yet in their career, like Ryan Dunn or Oso Ighodaro. Also, a center for the Suns is Nick Richards. So really, I don't know how I feel about their center room. I like their center room. Like, they've definitely upgraded from what they had last year when they had Mason Plumlee and Nick Richards. Like, they've definitely upgraded with the addition of Mark Williams and Malawach. But both those guys, right, you can't trust a rookie center to play 30 minutes a night, and you can't trust Mark Williams to stay healthy on the floor, and you just can't trust Nick Richards at all. Ryan Dunn is still a bad offensive player, as well as Oso Ighodaro. You added Jordan Goodwin, not someone I'm really impressed by. I loved the draft pick of Rasheer Fleming. I liked the pickup of Kobe Brea. But in terms of point guard, in terms of deep defense, the only good defensive players you have right now, Dillon Brooks, Royce O'Neal, and Ryan Dunn. I think Fleming will be a good defender. He just needs to kind of get his sea legs under him. But we'll really see where they go. But I just didn't love the Jalen Green in return. Sorry for the interruption, folks. Got a lovely call from my lovely lady. But yeah, not the biggest fan of Jalen Green in return for Kevin Durant. I do think it's the least of the 5 terrible moves I got. And honestly, I think there's a lot of bad things that came from the draft that I would rank over the Jalen Green move. Like, I literally think every single pick that the Nets made is worse than this one. I thought the Celtics draft is worse than this Jalen Green addition, right? But yeah, I think like the Pacers letting Miles Turner walk is worse than this, so maybe I should have had that on here instead. But I do think it's worth noting. Now, another thing that's sort of complicated to talk about, but I put it on here because I wanted to talk about it, is the Warriors' Jonathan Kuminga saga. The Warriors haven't done anything this offseason. Nothing at all. They've been waiting because they're trying to figure out what to do with Jonathan Kuminga, and they're trying to find these suitors for him. It might end up being the Sacramento Kings, and that would be such a Kings thing to do, to add Kuminga. But you've already burnt the bridge with Kuminga, so I don't see how you can even fathom bringing him back if you're the Warriors. I don't understand why the Warriors expect to get such a great return for a guy that they sort of tanked his value, right? They did so many, they messed with his minutes so much. He basically had to demand a trade a few years back to get into the rotation, even though he should have been in the rotation. And in the playoffs, he got inconsistent minutes, but when he was on the floor, especially in that second round when they lost Curry, Kuminga was one of their best players. So I just think that this whole way that the Warriors have gone about Kuminga has been really poor. You have a lot of people giving the Warriors an incomplete grade on their offseason, but I would give them an F. You're going to end up with a 40-year-old Al Horford for Jonathan Kuminga. Obviously, that's not the trade that they're going to make. They're going to get something back for Jonathan Kuminga. It might be a Malik Monk, which would be a good addition. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't give them an F, but I just don't understand how it's taken them this long to make the Kuminga trade. I don't understand, how you missed out on so many good free agents that really could have helped you because you took so long to do the Kuminga trade. You still haven't done it. I mean, if they end up in a position where Kuminga takes the qualifying offer and then they continue to sort of mess with the kid and his minutes and the rotation and what they're doing with him when it's very clearly obvious that he's one of your better offensive players, I just don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I think it's really stupid. I think the Warriors have been one of the worst places to be if you're a young player. I'm honestly about just going on a rant. I think Steve Kerr is one of the most overrated coaches of all time. He's successful because he's had a bunch of amazing assistant coaches that have gone on to be quality NBA head coaches. I think he's obviously lucky for having one of the greatest point guards ever in Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, another one of the greatest shooters of all time with Klay Thompson. Lucky to have a guy like Draymond Green to do all the dirty work. They've won so many series by being just dirty, nasty players. I forget his name, but they had that dirty, disgusting center a while back during their dynasty. They obviously got Kevin Durant. So they just have this immense amount of talent during Steve Kerr's tenure. I think he's just the most overrated coach in the NBA. He was terrible with the Olympic team and got bailed out by Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant again. So, excuse me for sort of ranting, but I think the Warriors continue to be one of the most obnoxious teams to follow in the offseason. They never do anything productive. They never do anything at all. They're sitting on their hands. They're not making good moves, and they're sitting on good talent. They didn't do anything for Moses Moody. They didn't strike when the iron was hot with Moses Moody. They didn't strike when the iron was hot for Wiseman, and it was very obvious that he was the wrong pick. They didn't strike when they could have traded for Anthony Edwards. Now they've ruined the development of Jonathan Kuminga when he still has a chance to be a good NBA player. So I just think that the Warriors continue to be one of the dumber franchises in the NBA that literally owe every single dollar that they make to Stephen Curry and a little bit as well to Draymond and Klay, because even though Klay's not there anymore, this team is still riding on those guys' back, and I think Steve Kerr and the people in charge of Golden State should be ashamed of everything that has gone on with this team in the offseason. They got lucky to run into an experienced Rockets team last year, and they got saved by Buddy Hield. Obviously, the Jimmy Butler trade last year was basically their offseason when they gave him a stupidly massive extension at his old age, but it had to be done. So you understood that, but you still had, you could have done something this offseason that would have been productive for your team if you struck early with Kuminga instead of letting all these other guys sign for different teams for minimums, and now you're sort of left here sitting on your hands with nobody really wanting Jonathan Kuminga. And outside of that, yeah, I mean, their center room is terrible. Clinton Post, Trajan Jackson Davis, Draymond Green is more of a power forward than anything. And then obviously you're probably going to sign 40-year-old Al Horford. So excuse me for the rant, but I really cannot stand what the Golden State Warriors have done.